Okay, so we're going to be focusing on how to differentiate form, function, content, and context. We're going to figure out how to use our study guide and our note takers to organize our class material, okay? Or what you need to know, like your essential understandings for each of the 250. Really? And that works. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our study guide. So our study guide is the one that has, it's the turquoise one with the lion on it. So the turquoise one with the lion. Okay, if you open up, right, so you have the first page has some passwords and stuff on it. Flip it over to the second page, right, and you see this. Okay, so this page, these are the list of the artworks that are found in the study guide for each like section that we get quizzed on, right? For every section that we get quizzed on. And so you'll see that the first section is going to be on prehistory, right? And that's what we're going to start with. And then the second section is specific culture. It's specific culture. And we're going to take a quiz over those two groups together. So usually I do at least 2 groups together for each quiz. I thematically choose them. So like I go over the Americas and Africa together because of colonization. There's some running themes that we see that are similar. And then a lot of Pacific culture has a lot of characteristics that are similar to prehistory. So I group those together, okay? So we'll be grouping those together and an entire page. So what you see here is what typically is on a unit test, right? Which is a quarterfinal in the course. So whatever artworks that we're going to use are listed here. You might notice that sometimes things get skipped, right? So if you look at the numbers, the first section is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, not 8, but then there's no 9. You see that? I put 9 with Pacific because it's from that region of the world. Does that make sense? Okay. And then you'll even notice that in Pacific, we have some that are in content area 10. So Earth Creations is by a contemporary artist. She's Australian, Aboriginal. And so I grouped her with that as well, because it works thematically for what we're going to do. Okay. So then study guide. If you open up the study guide to section 1, right, to section 1, this is what we're going to focus on tomorrow, right? So for tomorrow, we're going to be looking at artwork. So we're going to look at ours, not the one that's on the screen. We're going to focus on artwork number 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And then underneath of them are links that are already on Canvas, right? They're pre-populated in the prehistory section so that you can just click it through there, or, right? Or you could go Smart History and just find it there, because most of them are Smart History articles, especially for tomorrow since we don't have textbooks. So if it says page numbers in the textbook, just disregard that for tomorrow, okay? So you want to kind of pre-read or pre-watch some of the videos. I have a lesson number because it was just easier for me to organize it that way rather than dates, because I don't want to change things every year. But also sometimes a unit or some things take us longer or go faster. And so I like that adjustment. Sometimes we cover artworks that are not in the 250. So you might see that in this section here, we looked at the step pyramid of Dozier. It's not in the 250, but it helps us with an understanding of Egyptian culture and death rituals that will help us when we do the Great Pyramid. And it's also nice because it shows us how the pyramids progress. Okay, so sometimes we have things. So how I show you the difference is that this has the label for the textbook. So it's artwork number 35 in the textbook. And then it's number 17 in the 250. So if you see a single letter with a period, that lets you know it's in the 250. Does that make sense? Right? Because they're all numbered 1 through 250. You do not have to memorize the number. optional. It is a good place to put vocabulary. I don't have vocabulary on all of these study guide materials, but major concepts are listed here, so you can fill them in class when we're discussing those vocabulary terms. But this is really for you if you're struggling. If you're having a hard time getting through the reading, most of these are based on the reading. So if you were to start the reading, it would be in order. It's not even like you have to jump around. It's like I'm watching the video and they're addressing this fill in the blank. Like these are like major concepts and words to help you with understanding of the article. Okay, so once again, not mandatory, right? Not mandatory. It's only there if you have a hard time, or maybe if you're absent and for some reason there's no video, it'll probably help you learn it rather than just reading the information. Okay, it also might help you figure out what is the best information to write down in your note taking if you're absent. Okay. Oh, last thing I forgot is I also have the theme of the day. So I mentioned that I group the artwork based on a theme, and so that helps us understand the big ideas about all the artwork. So for this one, it's sacred spaces and ritual, and then it's even more specific. It'll be about death ritual for the ancient Egyptians. Okay. So in the homework, it tells you, in the study guide, it will tell you number 8 says book number here. So when we have like, let's say there's a series of like 5 questions, the first question will always tell you where you're going to find it. So is it in the Smart History video? Is it in the textbook? Is it in a random link? Okay, so it's always going to tell you where to find that information if you need to. And I try to also have a section with additional notes if you need it, but most of you will not because you have your notes. Okay, questions on study guides? Do you have to do the study guides? No. Why are you going to bother to even use them? What do they have in it to help you out? What do they have? Someone help me out. What's in this section here? So there's going to be vocabulary on some of the pages. It's going to tell you any links and readings that you need to know for tomorrow's lesson, right? I will post what we're covering every single day, but that whole slide page is really obnoxious when I add every single link that you need for homework, right? Also, I teach 7 courses. It is hard for me to be super organized for 7 different courses all day long. So I'm going to have, and this is an AP class, so I'm showing you where to find these things. They're all on Canvas, linked in the module for you. Okay, or they're in the 250 list that you already have, right? Hopefully you all bookmark those important things. So that is your study guide, okay? Your note takers. So your note takers, you have 2 of them. All we're going to be worried about first is value 1, right? So value 1, you can go ahead and open it up. If you want to go to page 17 so that we can look at it together, you can do that. So you'll notice that they are numbered at the very bottom of the page. All right, so right in the bottom of the corner, it tells you the number. Right? These are required. These count for 100 formative points for every quiz that you take. Right? I don't collect them. I don't collect them. What I have you do is make a recording or take photos of pages. Usually for entire completion, you take yourself a video of it page by page so that I can see it. Early on, I often have you take photos of certain pages so that I can help you if you're putting your notes in the wrong place, if you're writing too many notes, if you're writing too few notes. So I help you, give you tricks to help you take better notes. Okay, sound good? Okay, so they're required. If you bomb a quiz and you don't turn in your note takers, do you get to retake the quiz? You do not. So it is required that you have your notes done in the note takers if you are going to retake a quiz. You have to show that you prepared for the quiz. Okay? If your notes are late, you will not get 100% on it because I don't know if you had them prepared before we took the quiz. You will never get lower than a 90% if they are complete. Does that make sense? It's part of the new school policy that things have to be turned in 2 weeks, like up to 2 weeks late, and that we can't penalize them more than 10%. Okay? So that gives you incentive to turn them in when they're asked of you. Okay? I ask them to be turned in the day of the quiz. It's good if you turn them in before, but I know a lot of us are like worried about studying and not about recording our notes. Okay. So let's break it down, right? So what info must you have on your note takers? Oh, I forgot I had this lovely page. Let's go ahead and get away from the pyramids and let's go to, oh look at, I have a list of the 250 images in here too. Let's go ahead and go to page, there it is. It is the second page. So after the table of contents, you guys have this page. Right? Okay. These are broken down into categories and leading questions that are part of the AP Art History curriculum. Okay, so these are the big ideas. You have to have a basic understanding, or excuse me, basic identification. So in the very center, I write the title of the artwork that you must memorize, right? Knowing the name of something does matter on the AP exam. If you misspell something, it's not a big deal. It does have to be close and phonetic. If it's totally off, they will not give you credit if you had to do an identification of material. Okay. Then you have the artist name. Sometimes when we don't have the artist name, sometimes people put the culture. So like it might be like Republic of Empire Rome, and they might put that there instead. But also you can put the style at the very top as well, right? Because certain time periods that we have, there might be numerous styles, and so you might want a clear identification of the kind of style at the very top. You have to have the date of creation in the center, and you have to have the material, so what it's like made of. Okay, so that's going to be in the center there. For the AP exam, when you are doing an identification, that comes up with essays. They want you to have at least 2 bits of information memorized as an identification. Just having the name isn't enough, right? They want you to make sure that you're not just guessing, that you know which artwork you're talking about. And so they need 2. What I suggest that you do for any quiz that you take in this class is if I ask you for identification, that you memorize 3. Why would I have you memorize 3 rather than 2? Yeah. Exactly. So if you know at least 3 and you forget one on the day of the quiz, a little bit of pressure, a little bit of forgetfulness early, you got it, right? So I would suggest doing 2 bits of it, or at least 3 bits of information. Okay. So that's for your identification in the very center. We'll talk more about it later, but I would say the one that I memorize the least is the date. It's the hardest one. It's really easy for me to understand the culture or the name of the artist for the most part, the name of the artwork, and what it's made of. Typically easier, right? Typically easier. Even maybe like the location of where it's from, which can go under identification of artist and location. Okay, so then four. We are going to have this formal element section here that says formal elements. Form is basically how an artwork is put together, right? Form can be composition, right? But composition isn't always important. Sometimes arrangement, like in architecture, how is it arranged into like what rooms and that sort of thing. Also, form could be about like what it's made out of. That's really special, because if I say something is like diorite, it's diorite. Like, what's the big deal about diorite? It's really hard and permanent, like it's hard to break. And they intentionally use that because it's hard for someone to destroy an image of an important ruler, right? So sometimes the material matters for the meaning of the artwork. So you want to make sure that you got that in the form section. Now, something good to know is that I usually tell you on the notes. Like if I put a slide up and we have a question that we're going to talk about, I normally post questions and we have a discussion about it. I identify it on the slide as form. So if you want to on this page, since I call it formal element, I got this from someone else, by the way. So eventually I'll edit it all, just call it form. In this red box here, and even in materials, if you want to write the word form there, go for it, if that helps you. So go ahead and do that right now. I identify this box as form, so F-O-R-M. So this is going to be how it was made information and like how it's organized, its composition, and so on. Okay. I also highlighted this red area with materials, because obviously material is part of that. I forgot to mention that, of course, I have the image. This is the image that's on the AP exam. They will not show you artwork for the 250. That's not the photo that's in the note taker, right? They will have other images occasionally, and we'll talk about that later. We'll practice it to see your understanding. So they might have something similar and want you to associate it with something that we are studying. Okay, so, right, when you're looking at form, right, these are the kinds of things that you would incorporate. This is on page 17. You don't have to fill it in. You don't have to fill it in. But these are the things. So when we look at how it's made, we might look at the material it is used. Why is the Sphinx in front of the pyramid, right? So those sort of ideas, right? Why it is where it is. And technical, like how it's made. So like it's constructed block by block and then carved. Right? The next section is the content. The content. This one, notice a lot is in red, right? A lot is in red. So it could be content. It could be what do I see, right? Content is what do I see, right? So I see a sphinx in front of a pyramid, right? So what do I see? What are the parts? It could be symbolism. What is the meaning of the sphinx, right? That's going to also relate to function. There's no clear, and this is part of the tricky part, there's no clear difference with some of these, right? Content informs function, right? But these are the places where you would put them. So like we have our sphinx, right? What is the symbol of the sphinx? What do you think? What's the symbol of this? You guys have studied this before. What do you think? Why is there a sphinx, a Khafre, in front of his pyramid? And why is it so big? What does it show? Don't worry about being wrong. You probably will be wrong a lot, and that's okay. What about it? Yeah. It's guarding the pyramid, right? It's a lion and a human ruler, right? And besides guardian, it also just exhibits his power, right? So that's going to be the content. That could be the symbolism, the mood, right? It's meaning, as well as what you actually see. Context. This is the history part. So if you want to write on this page the history, right? The history, that's the thing that you have to keep in mind. The context is going to be the information about the time, the place, and the culture it was made. Now you're going to write cultural information here and maybe here, but this is where you're going to write deeper stuff, right? So like, how does it relate to the culture? What was the audience? How was the audience supposed to interact with the Sphinx, right? How was it displayed with study? And who was the patron? Those are those things that we learned yesterday with core plates make their results possible, right? So this idea that this and this and this tell us the who, the what, right? And the why often, right? And how it relates to history. I think the context is the easy part to always put in your study guide. It also is once again labeled on each slide. Right? Function, right? I don't know why this is not highlighted. This area too is obviously the function. Something with my animation is up and off. So the function is the why, right? Why was it created? And there are 3 questions here that basically ask you the same thing. Once again, I have to edit this. This was made by someone else. I just copied a bunch of them and helped her finish them. But this is all about what's the purpose of the piece, right? Why was it made, right? It could be, you know, is it just mere decoration? Is it communication about something? Is it commemoration about something, right? It could be, is it spiritual, political, social, or personal expression, right? So early on, a lot of the function of something is going to be very, very intentional, right? But then we get to Picasso and we look at Cubism, like what's the function of that? And so it might be more theoretical at that point. How do I relate Einstein's theory of relativity to the world, right? So that will go in our function area. So not in these places, but here, but this is like another really obvious area. So I'm not going to go into this too deeply, but each of these areas and why you're recording this information all relate to the skills that you need to have for AP art history, right? According to the College Board. So skill 1 is visual analysis, being able to pick apart an artwork, right? Contextual analysis, being able to understand the how, right? The how and the why it was made. So understanding the relationship between the history component and then it being made, right? Comparisons of work, right? Comparisons of work. This is a section we haven't talked about. When we start to look at several artworks, I'll use Romans as an example. We're going to see some early Roman work and some later Roman work. How is the later influenced by the earlier? So there's a section on continuity or change of style. So you can write notes about like, how is it similar to the early pieces, but then how is it different, right? How is it different? You at the very bottom have a section that's there about like related themes. So you might say, oh, here's a bunch of power images. And usually I write that information in after I have a lot of knowledge. Like when I'm studying for a unit test and I have a lot more to compare against. Okay, because we'll often do comparison essays on the exam. Actually, you will definitely have one comparison essay on the exam. Okay, artistic tradition, that can once again come in continuity and change in style, but you can also talk about it in all these different places, explaining how a specific art demonstrates the continuity of change of a tradition, style, or practice, how it, like the why it does, right? Explain the meaning and how it's changed over time. Once again, you don't have to memorize this at the moment. It will make sense once you get some work under our belt. Visual analysis of unknown works. I mentioned this earlier. So here, this is the Forbidden City. And so this is the Imperial Palace in China, right? So they might show you another Imperial Palace in China and have you compare the two together, right? a lot about Chinese imperial architecture because I know the Forbidden City. So there's an essay that's based on that. So you have to analyze the work and understand how it's similar or different to something you studied. Attribution of an unknown work. This would be where you would have to justify why something is similar to something you learned about, right? So they're going to put another artwork up on the screen and have you say, educated, I believe that's a Cézanne because it's similar to this work in this way, this way, this way. Art historical interpretation. This one is describing one or more art historically relevant interpretation of a work. So it's all about the meaning of the artwork. And we're going to find that there are different meanings to certain artworks. Some artworks, like William Spinks, for example, is an image of power, right? It's an image of authority, right? Which is given to power. You said it was an image of, what did you say? Do you remember? Yeah. It's a guardian, right? And so you just have to justify why you say it's a guardian, and I have to justify why I think it's power. Both can be equally correct. You just always have to have claim and evidence supporting your rationale, which is pretty much typical of all essays that we're going to do, right? Argumentation, having a claim with evidence, you literally have to do one long essay with claim and evidence. We'll practice all of these. Oh, that's it. So those are the skills that you need for AP art history and understanding how they relate to our note takers. Okay. Go ahead and stand up for a second, wake yourself up. Let me stop our recording.